Hello, how are you? Today is finally chapter 4 and 5. お待たせしました。Chapter 4 Constitution Day versus National Foundation Day. Okay, so let's start from chapter 4. So the important point today is the soul of Japan is made up of either metal or water. In other words, with water or without water. That is the question. From Shakespeare. I think you guys are a little bit tired of listening to about Japan all the time, so I'll talk about the United States here on purpose. Do you remember in this video I mentioned that there is no water in the prophecy of America? Actually, its waterless nature conversely proves the existence of some dimension beyond human knowledge. In short, the existence of God. America cannot exist on this prophecy alone because there is no water. So how is it possible to keep it as one country? It is the existence of these two that make it possible. As explained in this video, when we go back a little over the past 200 years, then it turned out the year of the ox will always be the year the Democrats take power. This cycle, this is important. Invariably, water energy of Democrats will play a role in permeating the water energy to the country by changing the government to the Democrats in the year of the ox. This will result in supplementing the energy of the US, which is short of water. In other words, the lack of water is the cause of these two parties, and the lack of water is the cause of this cycle. In other words, the Trinity is created due to the lack of water. Which means the Democratic Party corresponds to the spirit of the Christian Trinity theory because the spirit means divine wisdom, Sophia. And regarding the relationship between the Father and the Son, Justinus said that when a new fire is started with the prior fire, the new fire does not spoil the prior fire. And he explained how Jesus, the Son, can be distinguished from the Father by saying that he is derived from the Father. Torch as source of light, representing the Father, and fire to be ignited, representing the Son. Which means this is the Father, and the Republic is Son. So isn't this exactly what it is, a form of Trinity? Isn't this Trinity what Christianity is all about? Father, Son, and Spirit. 3 is 1 and 1 is 3. These three body prophecy represents the very Christian Trinity. The shortcoming of the lack of water proves that some spirit resides in America. It means that none of the three can survive without the other. It is amazing that it's proven in terms of Yin-Yang 5 elements, which is a theory that has nothing to do with Christianity. Yeah, it's really something. When I realized this, I really got goosebumps. It is once again the discovery of the century. This is really well done. The more I look at it, the more impressed I am. It's a pity that the people in the US don't know about this truth. Yeah, I really hope someone would recognize this value. In other words, the absence of water is the best proof of its characteristics and the spirit beyond human. Okay, so let me turn back to Japan. Based on that, therefore, what do you think about the case of Japan? The wisdom that the Japanese have developed uniquely, which is not found in other countries, proves that Japan is the country without water in the 5 elements. In other words, Japan has developed a culture that compensates for water through wisdom. We can see that the spirit of waterlessness resides in that wisdom. Water in the 5 elements is the energy of this fermented food. In other words, the energy of storage, because fermented food can be stored for a long time. It is the Japanese stylistic culture formed on the basis of supplementing water with the wisdom of creating fermented foods that proves the absence of water. In short, the Japanese gods gave the wisdom to replenish water, which is the creation of a nation, the origin of kunizukuri. Before Japan became a nation, a god named Okininoshino created the nation. he could not do it alone, so he did it with another god. There was this little tiny god, 少な彦の御事. He is said to be a god of medicine who came from across the sea riding on ガワイモノサヤ? I don't know how to pronounce. サイナンチャムロステラタム. Do you know that? Those two gods created the rice culture and formed a culture of making fermented and stored foods such as miso, soy sauce, bran, mirin, sake, pickles, vinegar, amazake, natto, azuki, hijiki, kombu, katsuobushi, so many things. In other words, they gave people the wisdom to create water based on the land of energy which lacked water in the five elements. So these foods in Japan taste so different compared to what other countries imitate and make, don't they? Wisdom comes in whether it is genuine or not. So no matter how much people abroad try to fake it, they cannot make it. So Japan has proven that it is a country without water through the wisdom to make genuine. Come to think of it, the tofu I found in France listed vegetable oil, olive oil as ingredients. The manufacturing process is already a mess. It is no longer tofu but completely some other stuff. Another one, I went to a Japanese restaurant in Taiwan, I guess. Yeah. And I ordered a set meal, teishoku. Then I found sugar in the miso soup. Of course, I couldn't drink it. Wait. And I don't remember which country, but yeah, they deep fried inarizushi. That is still here. There is no wisdom to create it, along with geographic factors. There is no wisdom in creating water in five elements. There lies God. Japanese culture that has developed with its own authentic wisdom, and I don't think any other country can match the Japanese one here. Therefore, if we want to eat authentic Japanese food, then you should come to Japan. I have friends from overseas who say that sushi is really bad, yakitori is inedible, and tempura is sticky and bad. But what they are eating is all fake and just different food with such names. After all, people who try to steal, they cannot steal the wisdom of the real thing. No matter how much a fake pretends to be the real thing, they cannot be the real thing. Yeah, it will definitely be exposed. The fake of a completely lower level dimension bursts into flames and runs rampant in the outside world in a contradictory way. I'm a little bit talking about this here. I'll explain this again later in detail. As I said in the last video, Japan is a culture of longevity that has developed uniquely by successfully incorporating fermented foods and dietary fiber into its life based on its waterless nature. This is expressed in the genetic evolution of not having alcohol-degrading enzymes. When alcohol enters the body, it is first broken down in the liver into a substance called acetaldehyde. This substance is extremely toxic and causes unpleasant symptoms such as facial and body flushing, headaches, nausea, and tachycardia. ALDH2, aldehyde dehydrogenase 2, breaks down this acetaldehyde. However, about 40% of Japanese people have a low activity type of ALDH2, which makes them susceptible to alcohol consumption. Another 4% are called the inactive type, in which ALDH2 is not active at all, and they are unable to drink alcohol. People with both types of consumption become sick even with a very small amount of alcohol. This type of ALDH2 activity is inherited from parents through heredity, so it is determined at birth and does not change later in life. So we cannot train it like a muscle to build up tolerance, for example. This is how the prophecy is expressed in the five-element cycle. This is exactly what it represents. Here is the question. Where is the most burdened place in this cycle? It's wood, right? Do you notice that? The wood must create fire with twice as much energy as itself. but the wood cannot grow because there is no water, and the wood is destroyed by metal. The wood of the five elements represents the liver in terms of organs in the human body. This means that the liver is weak. The resolution of the liver is weak by nature. In other words, weak alcohol resolving capacity. This cycle is exactly in line with the evolutionary process of the Japanese. And the kidneys are easily overloaded because of the presence of earth, spring, but no water. Earth opposes water, you know what I mean? Therefore, sushi, the combination of vinegar, wood energy, and rice, earth energy, reduces the burden on the pancreas by weakening the earth because it can inhibit a rapid rise in blood glucose levels, and also reduces the burden on the water, kidney, filtration function. It makes perfect sense. Yeah, in case you're wondering, the number of dialysis patients in Japan is 330,000, the second largest in the world. It is based on the cycle and the nature of these five elements. The genetic evolution of the Japanese people proves that originally there was no water in the five elements. The lack of water meant that the god resided in wisdom, which was inherited, and the Japanese became a nation of longevity. Japan is the country of longevity with genes that acquired and developed its own wisdom due to the lack of water. The water in five elements, which also represents hot springs. The Dogo hot springs, the oldest hot spring in Japan, was also created by this small god, Tsukunahiko no Mikoto. When Okurinishi no Mikoto fell ill, Tsukunahiko no Mikoto carried the hot water of Hayami in Oita through the seabed and made him drink it, and he recovered and became healthy. The hot spring that opened at this time became the source of the hot springs of Ionokuni, Inogun, Dogo Hot Spring in Matsuyama City, Ehime Prefecture. Actually, I often try this toji. Toji means bathing in hot springs to cure illness. Yeah, kind of a hot spring therapy. In addition, hot springs can cover all the five elements in this way, allowing for very efficient recovery. Actually, I have back pain and get headaches from it, especially after using muscle too much or after using brain too much. But if I get into very hot water, 43 degrees or more, even in the middle of summer, it really helps. Warming up the body cures most disease, I feel. Yeah, I really feel it keenly. I'm really glad I was born in Japan. So when Japanese people go abroad, they crave soy sauce and miso. It is like a withdrawal symptom. Also, I cannot stand living only in the shower. I definitely need to let my body soak in the bathtub. Yeah, this feeling that only Japanese can understand. Only Japanese can understand this pain, right? I digress for a moment, but I remembered something. That's why we Japanese have test of courage, Kimodameshi. Test of courage is there to go out of a way to test fear. The lack of water makes us want to experience fear in terms of emotion. Fear is the equivalent of water in five elements. We Japanese have become a country with such an interesting culture. When I was a child, we used to have sleepovers in school, and the school teachers would rent a shrine and make a set for the test of courage inside, Kimodameshi. And the teachers would dress up as ghosts and frighten us, startle us. Yeah, it was fun. 懐かしい. Yeah, it's very weird, but the experience of fear reminded me kind of nostalgic feeling. So, because of this nature, a lot of very unique horror films developed in Japan. Anyway, growing up in a water's environment in Japan, we developed a genuine wisdom to supplement water. Then we create water that we received from Tsukunahiko no Kami and Okurinishi no Kami, and we offer it as a sacred offering to the gods in gratitude for their wisdom to incorporate it into our daily lives. This is a ceremony called the Gosensai, in which meal is offered to the gods twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening, at Isejingu Shrine. It is a ritual ceremony to offer prayers and thanksgiving for the safety of the country and the people, and has been continued for about 1,500 years. It's an amazing culture. Some Japanese have kamidana in their house. There may be some differences depending on the family lineage, but usually sake, water, and rice are offered daily, like this. So the interpretation is that by offering shinsen, the meal for God, which is mainly water energy in 5 elements, we express the gratitude to God for achieving balance and harmony in our lives, and in return, we are protected by God. And it can tell that those meals are thanks to the wisdom that God taught us in the first place. So the key difference between the two prophecies is the presence or absence of water. In other words, is the soul of Japan made of water or metal? That is a huge difference, which we have to recognize. This also can be proven by the wisdom of our great ancestors. This letter was written by Prince Shotoku and sent to the Emperor of China in the name of Emperor Suiko in 607 AD. Prince Shotoku was a member of the imperial family and a politician in Yasuka era. Under his aunt, Emperor Suiko, he conducted politics in cooperation with Sugano Mako. Amid international tensions, he adopted advanced culture and institutions from Zui, which ruled the Chinese continent at the time, and the Korean peninsula, including sending envoys to Zui Dynasty, China, and established a centralized state system centering on the emperor by establishing the Crown 12 ranks and the 17-article constitution. In addition, he was a strong believer in Buddhism and worked to promote it, and in later times, Prince Shotoku himself became the object of reverence in Japanese Buddhism. At the time, the Chinese emperor is the greatest of all, and the countries around him are his retainers, paying tribute to China, and in return, they are recognized as kings of their own countries, which is a system called Sakuho Taisei. But what Prince Shotoku implicitly asserts in this letter is that I am an independent country with power equal to that of China. I wish to have equal relationships. And besides, since the Chinese dynasties had always fought a war of attacking a nearby country with a distant country as an ally, Enko Kinkosaku, the strategy of far ally and near attack. Prince Shotoku predicted that the Zui dynasty should want Japan as an ally in order to gain an advantage in the war. And he consistently continued to take a diplomatic approach that insisted on the following. We Japanese have been taught the Zui dynasty's culture, but we should be equal as nations. Japan is not a retainer of the Zui. And after all, making Japan the only independent nation in East Asia. Actually, for the first time, the interior of the hall associated with Prince Shotoku will be open to the public at the Enryakuji Temple on Mount Hiei in Old City this year, 2022. This is the hall Tsubakido at Enryakuji on Mount Hiei in Shiga Prefecture. Normally, the temple is used for monks' ascetic practices and is not open to the public. But this year, 2022, marks the 1,400th anniversary of the death of Prince Shotoku. On this occasion, the temple will be open to the public from September 3rd to December 4th Sunday. This is because the spirit of Prince Shotoku is still deeply rooted in Japan, even 1,400 years after his death in the first place. So what kind of spirit will remain in Japan for thousands of years? This is exactly Kanoto. It asserts that we, Japan, are an independent entity. That is what Japan has become today. The Prince Shotoku appealed to the Zui that, unlike the Chosen Sangoku 3 Chosen kingdoms, Japan paid tribute to the Zui dynasty but did not take the path of becoming a vassal by being given a government position or title. This was the reason why he referred to the king of Japan as the Tenshi. emperor of the sunrise place, and the Zui emperor as the tenshi of the sunset place. The tenshi emphasizes that Japan and Zui are on equal footing. We will not bow down to any great power, for we are the tenshi of the land of the rising sun. So what Prince Shotoku is advocating here is the very energy of Kanoto itself. Actually, there is some kind of strange theory circulating in Japan. There was no such person as Prince Shotoku in the first place, for example. This letter proves his existence. Anyone at the top who really wants to lead Japan in the right direction realizes the important point that Japan must go it alone, solo, independent. A truly powerful person will notice this value. So they never act in groups, much less pander to the superpowers. With this in mind, on the contrary, what do you think this prophecy, 1949, May 3rd, says? It says that Japan will bow down to the US and lives by the face of the US, cannot do anything without the US, because the spirit is water from the first place. And because other energies are gathered around the Mizuno, water, in this way. And this says that the Japanese nation is water. So what is water originally? What are the natures of water? This is water plus energy, representing lakes or oceans. For example, suppose the right-hand cup is the Sea of Japan and the left-hand cup is the Yellow Sea, Kokai. And mix these. Then if you are asked to take only the water from the Sea of Japan, would you be able to do it? It's absolutely impossible, right? That's the nature of water. In other words, you can't tell how much of it is your own thought and how much is the thought of others or the people around you. However, since Kanoto can exist as a single entity, it can claim that this is me, which is a big difference, isn't it? Those qualities are derived and interpreted as sensing the movement of the masses, or as explained here in Putin's nature. Kate is also the same. Well, though, now that her prophecy have turned to Yin, so she must feel always anxiety because her soul always resonated with the masses. That's why she acts like, are they my enemy? Are these people are my enemy? Are they also my enemy? That's how it's showing up. So in her case, the fear of public reaction translated into the behavior of being unresponsible. Because her soul is water, so which is always affected by the masses. So she no longer even knows what is her own thinking. Easily influenced by the thought of others and assimilated with their own, so she have no choice but to act to protect herself by not making any eye contact. 水のと water minus. This can also be explained in the same way. I explained the nature of Johnny Depp, didn't I? That was a really good example to explain the nature of water. It's that kind of thing where the child's feelings and emotions and the Johnny's feelings and emotions, in other words, child's water and Johnny's water come together, and that kind of chemistry show up. So that's how water moves. No matter what the earth's zodiac sign is, water moves like that. If it's a good nature like Johnny, it expresses a kind of warm heart, compassion, but if it is in a bad nature, it will be influenced by their surroundings, lose sight of themselves, and become dependent on their surroundings like Putin or Kate. Putin and Kate are the worst version of water, which is expressed as a kind of addiction. 依存症? This means that if the soul of Japan were water, it would not remain alone as it is today. This is contrary to the spirit of Prince Shotoku. It goes against his spirit, which has been preserved for 1,400 years in Tsubakido. Now we will get into the point of what's this prophecy telling us. The first and the most important feature of this prophecy is the absence of metal energy. This in a nutshell means that there is no passing down wisdom or no past, no history. It represents that made-up fact that we Japanese have not inherited them. It denotes that there is nothing to inherit. This is in a word, the energy of book burning, 焚書処分. In other words, this prophecy of no metal really shows the hidden intention of GHQ. In Japan, GHQ burned 7,769 items and 38,330 volumes of important Japanese books. Everything that was inconvenient for GHQ was covered up and hidden and burned. From the perspective of this prophecy, it means that if we Japanese dwell on the past, we lose our destiny. Just say that if we dwell on the past, our destiny goes awry, which means that it is really inconvenient for GHQ to be dwelled on the past. It is really well expressed on this prophecy. But on the contrary, since there is no metal, the huge energy of people who want to rehash the past, uncover the past, and revive learning is concentrated, resulting in the phenomena of history, the past, and learning being revived or coming out. So that's why naturally there was a trend to revive the National Day. And this is just a side note though. This is a fact I learned yesterday. I discovered that my energy is what caused double hankai with Mishima-san to create crazy amount of metal. I was unaware of this fact until yesterday. Suddenly I had the idea to check it out and ta-da! Wow! びっくり. This was a natural momentum. And above all, the energy of metal is the energy of the past and the history of wisdom in this prophecy. But metal is essentially the spirit of the Japanese people for this prophecy. So the energy to restore the spirit of Japan must have been concentrated around 1966, along with the regretful energy of those who died in the war. In addition, the absence of this metal means that there is no metal for water sources, which means that water stagnates and corrupts. This Mizunoe is corrupt. In other words, the nation becomes corrupt. And under that water, there is horse. This means the sun in the south, 12 o'clock. The strongest sunlight of the day, and this horse represent GHQ. Here on this prophecy. It represents the state of corrupt water being dried up by the sun, GHQ, here. This is what it looks like when visualized. As a side note, but it's quite important, talking about Russia helps to understand the Mizunoe horse. In the case of Russia, the Mizunoe horse exists in the middle. Mizunoe horse is composed of the energies of contradiction, where the spirit is the water of midwinter, and the reality is the fire of midsummer. In the Russian prophecy, Mizunoe is Russian citizen, and the horse is Putin, government, Russian government. That's why the Russian citizen and the government react like that. If Putin horse issues a red paper akagami, the people try to escape like that. Putin try to bind them so that they cannot escape from the country. And after all, Putin tried to control them by imprisoning them for 10 years. Furthermore, Putin insists that they have succeeded in annexing Ukraine without permission, right? Why is this like this? This is due to the negative effect of Mizunoe horse. It is really working. And he proved that this is really the prophecy of Russia. When the Ango-Kango phenomenon occurs like this, the nature of Mizunoe water plus changes to Kinoe wood plus. Then the Hinoto energy in this changes to Kinoto wood minus. then this represents the emergence of a dimension that does not exist in this world. In other words, not existing in this world means living in delusion. Exactly Putin doing. This process speaks of Putin's inability to accept the present reality of its defeat and to live in delusion. That is exactly how it goes. If Putin, Russian government are in a young turn, their intuition may work and they may be able to foresee the future through inspiration, but since they don't have that much ability to turn young from the first place, Putin and Russian government will be in a in turn and live in a world of delusion with Kango phenomenon. Technically, Ango Kango phenomenon. Unable to accept reality. And the Mizunai horse's nature of being able to act independent to open the way to fortune has converted into the isolation of the Russian citizens and the government from the rest of the world. By the way, didn't Putin suddenly make a statement like, we want to get along with Japan? 日本と仲良くしたいです。Around the last month? I don't remember exactly when though. Why do you think that was? It's quite important. Yeah, this is also due to the Mizunai horse. Because the Russian policy forms written with the left end of this policy. Here are his true intentions and plotting. In this policy, Mizunoe represents the Japanese nation, and the horse represents the United States. You see? Yeah, inexperienced are the real deal. Interesting, isn't it? Putin's plot and true intention came out in the Mizunoe horse. This is how to use inexperiments, okay? Anyway, this is Mizunoe horse. So with that in mind, let us return to this prophecy. This prophecy has the Mizunoe horse on the far left. So this is because GHQ wanted Japan's Yamato spirit to be depleted and isolated to create a reality that is convenient for GHQ, which is why the Mizunoe horse is coming here. And since this is the energy of the Ten Chusatsu, it means that the perfect nation will never be completed, always incomplete, and was created with that intention. And it will always pander to the United States, this means. Based on this, we go to the rightmost pairs, the Hinotoi, Hinoto-bo. The Hinotoi means a candle floating on a cold lake in winter. The heaven zodiac sign is Hinoto, representing the spirit of summer, and the earth zodiac sign is Bo, which represents the reality of winter. In other words, this also represents a contradiction. In other words, the Japan's stated principles say that the spirit is the fire of middle summer and the reality is water of middle winter. But in essence, it is saying that the spirit is water of middle winter and the reality is the fire of middle summer. In the middle of the contradiction energy of water and fire, Kanoe-Tatsu exists. This Kanoe-Tatsu, called Nikkyo Ten Chusatsu, a very special energy in which there is a spirit but no reality. And the special energy is in the middle, which means a country built on faith, spiritual and religious. The spirit of the Japanese people's belief in God has been transformed and manifested in Kanoe-Tatsu. The spirit of sacrificing oneself and rushing into enemies to save for the sake of the higher ups. In sum, this prophecy says that the Japanese people's spirit of belief in God, Kanoe-Tatsu, was surrounded by the contradictory energies of fire and water with cross, tasukigake, to seal Kanoe-Tatsu. Just in case for the Japanese people, この名式は国民の神を信じる精神、Kanoe-Tatsuを 火と水のたすきがけの矛盾のエネルギーで取り囲んでキノエタツを封印したって言ってるんですよ。As a supplement for the Japanese, what does Christianity purify with? Christian people purify with water and fire, though we Japanese use salt and sake to purify. But Christianity uses fire and holy water, right? They cut the cross like this and sprinkle holy water, right? 十字を切って聖水まくでしょ。That is why the spirit of the Japanese people who are willing to sacrifice their own lives to rush into the enemy seems so abnormal and so scary from the American people's point of view. What in the world is Japanese people? They felt like that. That's what's out there. Don't you sometimes see a creepy shrine that is not maintained at all? Dark, damp, slightly musty, such a dingy shrine. In shrines like that, not gods but the demons of a lower dimension already live. It has become a dangerous place, so please don't go such a kind of strange place, strange shrine, I mean. In other words, right now in Japan, the sublime divine spirit in this Kinoetatsu is absent. And what came into Kinoetatsu that sealed the spirit of belief in God? The Unification Church. In this Kinoetatsu, the Unification Church has become parasite. In this Kinoetatsu, the Unification Church has become parasite. だから管理されてない魂の抜けた神社の中に魔物が住み着いたっていう状態だね。And this presents the state of affairs. That is, the nature of the water I just described so hard. Religious organizations have entered the state and it is no longer even clear where the nation begins and where the religious organizations begin. It is the nature of this water that it blends in so well that you can no longer tell where from and to where is the Japanese state and where from and to where is the religious organization. Because it is not conscious quality at all, but water. That's why I insist that this is not the policy of Japan. At the same time, so that's why I insist that it's very important for the young Japanese people to learn the nature of earth, fire, earth, metal, and water. Moreover, on top of that, this water has no source, as I said. The Mizuno nation without a source of water was dried up by the sunlight GHQ that went south, and it seeks help, relying on diplomacy. The essential nature of water cannot identify to what extent one is oneself and to what extent one is a stranger. In other words, a country that is endlessly dependent on the US to no end was born. This policy says something like that. From here we go to the part that makes us more certain. The bo in the hinotoi contains the kinoe and the mizunoe, and the hinoto and this mizunoe cause the ango-kango phenomenon. When one's own nature is combined with another's nature, it changes to totally different nature. It means a change of hidden nature. What does this ango-kango represent? It represents the fact that the emperor is always worried about not having someone to protect him. Who does he need to be protected by? The Japanese nation, Mizunoe. In other words, it represents that emperor subconsciously believes that he always wants the nation to protect him and that he will be in trouble if he is not protected. As I explained last time, because the emperor's family is now in the position of being protected by the state rather than protecting the state. And in addition, as I said last time, the emperor stands on a contradiction. This means that it is a very unstable entity. I read this as a state of a constant ango-kango happening. In other words, it is always this way. And the nation is not functioning. It is in a state of instability. And the emperor, who is also the spouse, is not functioning as emperor, who actually has a role to protect Japan. So this Mizuno horse is also in a state of ango-kango. This whole process is almost always in such a state. Kinoe, Kinoe, Kinoto. You know what I mean? What this means is that Emperor Hinoto will have a Kango phenomenon with Mizunoe, Japanese state, and change his appearance into something equivocating ambiguous, thus becoming Kinoto. The emperor is Kinoto, and Kinoto is a plant of ivy. And Japanese people is Kinoe. The Kinoe means big tree. At the same time, Japanese nation is also Kinoe because of the Kango phenomenon. It means that emperor is a nature to live like a parasite, clinging like ivy to the Kinoe, big tree. It means that the emperor is a nature that lives like a parasite, clinging like ivy to the instep of the state and the people. We glimpse it frequently because it's an unstable nation. Because the emperor is an entity founded on contradictions, and it is no longer the emperor. The special zodiac sign of Kinotoi suggests that the emperor's dimension has dropped to the point where he is no longer the emperor. But who is he? As an aside, North Korea has been provoking Japan by shooting missiles. South Korea, China, and Russia have been threatening Japan's territory. So the low-dimensional people abroad can easily come in because the Japanese dimension has fallen. That can be explained by this process. It can also be explained by the Gaia energy of ox and horse in this process. And even stranger, if the heaven part is all wood energy, what does it say? If the heaven part turns to Kinoe, Kinoe, Kinoto, what does this mean? This means to be consistent in spirit and to be single-hearted without thinking about anything else. So what does this translate to in this prophecy? This means that the nation and the emperor are like an unstable married couple, 2 and 1. The emperor can live by wrapping himself around the Japanese people and the nation like ivy and becoming a parasite. This is what Japan is all about. So please live coherently and with determination without questioning every single thing. おめえ何言ってんだWe have no idea what it means. そりゃそうでしょ。But I don't know what does it mean, but that is how we have come so far for such a long time. That is how Japan has been established. It used to be a god that protected the country, but now it is this kind of existence, a parasitic vine plant. What do you think? Shouldn't it be like this? This is not a symbol, but just a fantasy. 象徴でも何でもないでしょ。虚像でしょうよ。We have come a long way so far in part 1, part 2, part 3, but this main subject, why is Japan collapsing? Bottom line, Japan is broken because of this. This energy is permeating and taking root. 怒ったよ。Even the earrings fell out. How far will this How far will this country fall? This is very serious problem indeed. Japan is no longer a country of the spirit, but a country of delusion. By the way, who says this is the policy of Japan? Anyone who says that this is the policy of Japan is doing exactly the same thing as the unification church, spreading false teaching and leading people in the wrong direction. This is the biggest sin in Buddhism, by the way. It says that anyone who does this kind of things will fall into the animal world and will never return to the human world. In other words, more and more the human population may decrease rapidly and the number of pets and animals may increase rapidly in the future. because they cannot ascend to the human world through reincarnation. It's sarcasm as best I can. だからやりたい放題でたまらかったんだな。So let's at least leave this irony here as a prediction of Japan's future. But there is a way to stop this Kango phenomena. It is for this Kinoe, the Japanese people, to function as the Japanese people. Then the energy will change from Mizunoe water to Ut Kinoe and to fire Hinoto in a circulating manner. You know what I mean? From Mizunoe water to Ut Kinoe, then from Ut Kinoe to fire Hinoto. So in other words, if the people are functioning, this Kango phenomenon will stop. However, since the people are not functioning as the Japanese people, and the energy in the middle is the unification charge, the emperor is almost always in the state of Kinoto, the state of a parasitic vine. So, what should we do? So now let's move on to chapter 5, prediction of Japan's future on this story. The most recent major trend in Japan is that starting in 2023, we will enter a 10-year trend in which the central pillar will be Tenkokuchichu. The decade beginning in 2023 will be the decade in which all the illusions of the past will be eliminated. We will see the reality, and from the reality we will rebuild from the roots up, from zero, the very foundation of the nation. We are in a situation where there are no roots to begin with. This tiger represents a tree with roots firmly planted deep in the ground. Therefore, if we are firmly rooted in the ground, nothing will happen. But since the center of Japan is rootless and has been built without thinking, how did I know? The phenomena of Japanese wealth, fortune, tiger, flowing outward, influenced by the tiger horse Hankai energy because it is not rooted in the country from the first place. In Japanese, 思考せずに国を立脚してきたので、財が半壊のエネルギーに乗って外に流出する現象が起きているってことね。Now, this proves that tiger in the center of Japan has no roots. That's why it will be the decade of great destruction will come to everything. Of course, the government, of course, the same goes for the flame-selling YouTubers. It will be a decade in which the individualistic, hedonistic ideas that have been prevalent in business and the government will be eliminated across the board. Everything that has stood without thought is broken. Everything that has stood on the basis of hedonistic ideas will collapse. There is a momentum. In other words, I'm just going with the flow. I'm taking advantage of it to make this kind of manufacturing, which I'm working hard right now. I use the energy that is available at the time. That is the best. And what I said right now is the main important point to understand the original energy of Japan and to learn how to make use of it. And above all, to begin with, the inner five elements to make good use of the energy of the environment as it is. So, to understand what it is the Japanese people and to function as Japanese people, what should Japanese do? I would like to explain about the middle pillar of this prophecy, Kanoe-Tiger. The meaning of Kanoe-Tiger is that the result of an action that emerges from one's ideal spirit is the exact opposite of what one thought it would be. Here is an easy to understand example. This is a product called FujiYama glass by a company called Tajima glass in Edogawaku, Tokyo. The real thing is handmade by craftsmen like this. The edge of the glass is only 1.5 millimeter. The Mount Fuji changes its appearance depending on the beverage poured into the glass, making it a very beautiful product. So if you like, you can buy one from this company. From this company. However, counterfeit products are rampant and causing trouble at an even faster rate than that. Around Fuji Day on February 23rd this year, they were inundated with 100 complaints inquiries per day. Like, it's because your company doesn't do it right. It is your company's fault that I was tricked into buying fake glasses from China. Your company should take the responsibility for that. 理不尽 yeah, and so on. It's really nonsensical, right? In other words, one's own creations will work on their own against one's will and be reflected in the outside world in a different way. And worst of all, in Japan, the Hankai phenomenon of the fire of tiger horse spreads its unintended consequences even more rapidly. In addition, there is a large energy gap between the two flows of Ki, and the Gai energy of the oxen horse is also compounded. The combination of this and the Gai caused by the oxen horse will cause fakes to be rampant on completely low level of dimension. Therefore, there is an unfortunate reality that if you have great ambitions to create something in Japan, you will be caught up in something you didn't intend to do. It's a very unfortunate situation and I really feel sorry for them. But しかしThey have sold 700,000 units since the company was established, and 1.57 million people have learned about this company through this one news report. This company was able to get correct information from the media for free and also to advertise its products, which was seen by 1.57 million people. And the sales increased, didn't it? Besides, there is no direct financial loss to this company so far at this time. Isn't that amazing, Yeah, I thought this is what they mean when they say turning a misfortune into fortune. 災い転じて福となる。Yeah, this Kanoe-Tiger has the meaning of good luck. I kept thinking how to explain this good luck. I remember some good examples, so I will talk about what lucky is based on those 3 examples. I know someone who is a Harvard graduate and the Harvard Graduate School graduate, a certain business owner. I once went to help this owner move. Of course, the new address was a prestigious and expensive place in Tokyo. The rent is high, seemingly perfect, right? It looks like a successful person among successful people, doesn't it? At first glance. But once inside the house, you see the truth. At first, I didn't know what the discomfort was. The point is that it is unnatural. On the contrary, a natural house is one in which the yin and yang energies are well balanced and placed where they should be. I think that is one of the definitions of a good house. It is the basic premise of a good house. So, what was it like inside the seemingly successful house? It turned out that it was with the sun beating down on the toilet and the living room dank and dark. All year round, heat builds up in the toilet bathroom, which means that the smells are magnified by the heat and become trapped. And the living room is dark and cold. In other words, there was an inversion of the situation. What should have been yin was becoming yang, and what should have been yang was becoming yin. Why do you think that is? This person always starts with, no, it's not like that. No, it's not like that. No, yeah, そうじゃない。Yeah, そうじゃない。No. Always starting with a countervailing negative. Simply put, this owner is unable to grasp the situation honestly. And he always goes against what people, including his subordinates, say. Advice is never heeded. It's really funny for me, but the most radical was he described himself in this way. The people I like are leaving and only the people I don't like are coming to me. So だろうね。The decent people are uncomfortable with this kind of person, This is a person's nature as it is. Therefore, in the 5 elements, a person in this state of being is said to be very unwise and dim-witted. In other words, this is called bad luck. Unfortunately, there will be no developing living in this house. In addition, as expected, this owner is hanging around in the direction of Gosas and Dankensas. As you can guess. The reason why is because the person himself is creating the flow of bad luck. This person has attracted this strange and unnatural house by his own way of life. But this person is unable to notice the house's discomfort because he does it all the time. The value of a house is equal to its ability to follow and make use of its just natural flow from wood to fire, fire to earth, earth to metal, and metal to water. But it takes a certain amount of wisdom to find such an environment, or to notice such a place and to be drawn to such energy. The true smartness, a person who holds such a state of being is called lucky in 5 elements. For example, someone I know who has all 5 elements of energy is, somewhat lucky, Of course, she doesn't know anything about the 5 elements, gosatsu and gensatsu or kigaku or whatever. She's honest and intrinsically smart, though she doesn't have a college degree. But from my point of view of the 5 elements, she's much smarter than this Harvard owner because she's lucky, It's just simple. The Yin-Yang 5 elements can visualize the truth that cannot be measured by the world standard, It can visualize true wisdom. Here is a second example. This also happens to be a Harvard-educated person who came from a large famous corporation and after that manages chain hotels in Japan. This chairman is a Harvard-educated manager or completely different from the person in the first example. It is just coincidence. I'm not saying that Harvard University is not capable of great things, but it sounds as if it... Sorry. That was not my intention. It's just coincidence. Sorry. Yeah, Red Planet Hotel. A lot of Red Planet hotels collapsed and the stock prices also plunged under Corona during this couple of years. But not everyone is like that. Look at Upper Hotel. Yeah, it's almost reign supreme. I looked up how this victory was decided, and as I have said since video part 1, the spirit of contributing to society by sacrificing oneself is inherent in Upper Hotel. In other words, the president of the company herself has such a spirit by nature. In the early stages of the corona epidemic, she was the first to accept corona patients and took the initiative in contributing to society. She was the first to move in the chain hotel industry. After that, the various hotels began to take the initiative, but then the momentum of calculation began to emerge as if it would be more profitable to receive government subsidies and accept corona patients than to have an occupancy rate of 0%. The reason for one closure after another for Red Planet Hotel is, after all, that the center of Japan is Kanoe. This means that if you operate for personal profit, you will be eliminated. Kanoe is the ability to immerse oneself in one thing and pour one's passion into it. But if that passion does not have the fundamental reason to help the people around it in the first place, it would not operate. Therefore, if the basic reason is to expand the company's profit and the culture of making money in Japan is based on the unspoken foundation, the phenomenon of elimination will occur in this way. As I mentioned earlier, the result is 180-degree opposite of what they expected. Red Planet Hotel of this Harvard-educated manager was not on the list of hotels accepting corona patients. In short, whether or not one is able to serve society with a spirit of sacrifice in times of financial hardship in critical situations is the decisive factor between turning this prophecy yin or yang, between the company's survival or not. The Red Planet Hotel has turned this Japanese prophecy in negative shift because it was motivated by self-preservation in critical situations, or that is their original stance. It's by nature. It's just revealed through coronavirus. Then the momentum will not be on their side at all. The fact that the Japanese spirit is not on their side at all is fatal. And they will be in a situation of bad luck, and they cannot get up from there. Even if she has an MBA from Harvard, you cannot run a business if you start with superficial knowledge without understanding the true nature of energy in Japan. Because smartness stems from true wisdom, and true wisdom is luck. The management team here has exposed their lack of brains through bad luck. In case you are wondering, this hotel has cleaned out its management team and changed everything. Employees come and go. A company that doesn't retain its employees, because the important spirit I just described is not at the heart of this company. A company with a poor or unstable ki flow of the five elements, or a company that is in a negative turnover has a lot of people coming and going. The ki is not stable and the people are not settling in. I actually know someone who worked here as an executive but quit after about a year. So what happens when people from overseas immigrate to Japan under the auspices of individual hedonism and devour the wealth of Japan? They fall into a situation where they can neither get by nor get out of it. In other words, Kanoe's original management stance is exposed under critical situations. But true wisdom seems to blow away like the president of Upper Hotel. The lucky ones have the wisdom of straightforwardness to just go with the flow. Like, oh, Corona is here, so let's make the most of this situation. To go with the flow and make the most of the situation requires true wisdom. But even a Harvard graduate cannot acquire true wisdom. In this way, the bright and dark sides of success and failure were truly visualized. If a company really has a proper stance, if it has a root to contribute to society, it will sparkle in the face of adversity, like Corona, because this process is exactly that kind of energy. 逆境下で輝くってことね。And then I looked into how this Upper Hotel president could make so much money. I really envy her. My first impression when I got to know her was she was just lucky. Super lucky girl. A super lucky lady. Sorry. For example, when this Red Planet Hotel runs out of money to operate, they give up their real estate, right? Then she comes in and buys it right away. She always doing like that. She said there is no better time than now, and she buys it with cash. Why? To take advantage of the opportunity. She understands this very well. She sees an invisible flow of momentum, right? Yeah, anyone can ride that flow, but all in all, in the end, most people fail to see the momentum. What makes luck is the ability to ride the flow of the seasons, which are wood, fire, earth, and metal, in the aspect of inner five elements. It is the ability to see it and the wisdom to recognize it. Yeah, at the first glance, it doesn't seem like much, right? But it is a big deal. This was the big difference between winning and losing. The third and the final example of someone who proved this very well is Miss Olga Smirnova. Ballet dancer Olga Smirnova quit the Bolshoi Ballet to join the Dutch National Ballet in Amsterdam. The announcement was made on March 17th. In other words, she had already moved to the Netherlands and started her new life before that. Which means she had started lessons already at the time. Leaving Russia, where she had lived for 30 years, in less than 2 weeks is not an extraordinary decision, is it? Isn't it an extraordinary decision-making ability? Combined with her instantaneous ability, she is able to accurately assess the situation and make the best decision because she has true wisdom to make the most of the situation. We all remember how many global companies got caught up in strange situations because they were late in deciding whether or not to stay in Russia. On the other hand, there are also many companies that were successfully exploited by the Russians and their travels ballooned. Now Russians cannot even escape from the country. Luck, in other words, resides in those who possess true wisdom, which is the honesty to see a situation as it really is. It's the ability to accurately assess a situation and make use of the energy present in the situation. It is akin to the wisdom of making the most of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water in the five elements. Returning to this prophecy, this says that the center of Japan is iron. The interpretation of Kanoe-Tiger as lucky comes from the fact that it is produced by the flowing iron of Kanoe, the pure flow of potential energy that produces Kanoe. This zodiac sign is the only one among the 60 zodiac signs that produces Kanoe in such a way. It is said those who controls the iron controls the nation, or iron is the blood of the nation. The fact that the iron is in the middle of this prophecy, which is created by this flow, can be said to be a very lucky nation. The Kanoe of luck can also be described as honesty. It is not the realm of low-level human beings such as scheming and planning, but the realm of those who catch a divine message and say, "Oh, let's create this for someone else." I think that is the true nature of luck. So no matter how low the dimension may be, we must not give up on creating godlike works, and those godlike idea or works must not be influenced by the low dimension and lose sight of our direction. So in this prophecy, Kanoe not belong to this dimension of fire, right? Yeah, this is the value of the fact that this Kanoe exists on the natural flow of wood to fire, fire to earth, and earth to metal. And this very prophecy says that the lucky iron Kanoe, the sword, is the Japanese people. This is the greatest advantage of Japan. It means that the people of Japan are people who are passionate about helping others, who try their best to be useful, and who even become swords by doing so. However, since the pyramid is currently in this state, we have little power to turn it yang around. Yeah, because the former has increased greatly, especially since the end of the war. This is because, as I explained earlier, the dimension of the country itself has gone down, and because the reality is this pyramid, those without wisdom have reincarnated and come to live in this country. It is indeed a venerable problem. And here, what kind of person is an inexperienced and immature soul? Yeah, this is the kind of person. Komuro and Mako-sama. Yeah, there are more and more people like this. So here I would now like to return to the Japanese national anthem at the beginning of this video, Kimigayo. Actually, this poem of anthem is included in the 7th volume of the Kokin Wakashu, which was performed on April 18, 905. This means this poem was written more than 1,100 years ago. Actually, we Japanese don't know the author of this poem. The author of this poem is unknown, Yomibito Shirazu. However, this poem, whose authorship is unknown, has become Japan's national anthem. It is strange, isn't it? Because this poem is the essence of Japan. It has become Japan's national anthem because the spirit of this poem matches the essential spirit of Japan itself. And above all, because the pseudonym God uses when he wants to claim something is Yomibito Shirazu. The point of the Kimigayo poem is that Japan is made up of a collection of kanoto. Here it is expressed as a sazareishi, kind of fine stones. As I explained in the previous videos, kanoto is a form that cannot be achieved by corrupted human beings. It is the final form, so to speak. It is the ideal state or form that one can finally reach after hard work and effort and passing through various ordeals. In other words, the poem says that only when one has raised oneself to the state of kanoto, sazareishi, can one be counted as a citizen of the nation. Those who have reached the ultimate state of self-improvement, or in other words, those who are kanoto, attract each other and become a family, and their offspring flourish. This is one of the critical reasons why the birth rate is declining and why there are no more children being born. The other day, I visited the Yamanashi Jewelry Museum. There I learned about husband and wife quartz crystals, officially called Nihon Sousho, Japanese twin crystals. Quartz crystals can be found all over the world, but this type of crystal, which is made of two quartz crystals that are attached to each other, can only be found in Yamanashi Prefecture and Narushima Island in Japan. This is why Japanese quartz crystals, which are SiO2, the standard for quartz crystals, have a special magnetic property that makes them stick together when they meet a certain standard. In other words, the Japanese archipelago is originally charged with this special magnetism that makes two such things stick together. The same can be said for the Japanese, and I believe that if a person becomes kanoto, the Japanese standard, he or she may have a special magnetic nature. I saw this kind of news once. The number of young people who don't want to have children and don't want to get married is increasing. The number of such people is increasing who have just let the years pass by without raising themselves to a state of hardship. That is why they are not even interested. They are so occupied with themselves that they have no time to look around them. They are more and more half-hearted in and half-hearted young people who cannot even reach the level of Kanoto, the definition of Japanese season. The number of people in the halfway state who cannot be counted as one Sazareshi has increased enormously. So nothing attracts each other. They all hang out in this dimension of fire. Like Chibakure. Most of Japanese can't get out of here. Only bad karma attracts each other just like them. Mako-sama and Keikomuro. I'm sorry, but I have to say that she is the worst example. In the first place,秋篠宮family entire lineage is turning inten, negative shift. This means a diversion from the emperor's house and living independently. However, it cannot be real, which means that they got no choice but to live their lives itself with the state of inten. What this means is that they are asked to forcibly sacrifice their lives. By doing so, they can turn this Japanese prophecy into Yang turn. That is the only way to live. This means that when they are born into this family, they are not given the right to pursue their personal happiness. Why? Because they have been doing this to the Japanese people. I wrote about my great uncle Yoshio-san in the comments section of my part 1 video. He was engaged and was going to be married, but the red paper Kagami came and he went to war and died on the island of Luzon in the Philippines. In other words, he gave up his personal pleasure and prosperity for the emperor and died. The秋篠宮is the family that is built on the sacrifice of many people from these backgrounds, so the whole family is in a negative turn. 家族全体が生まれながらに引転しているということです。Simply put, it means that they are not given the right to marry and have a family at birth. They are not given the birthright to procreate and pursue personal pleasure. For them, marriage is the pursuit of personal pleasure. 彼らにとって結婚は個人享楽の追求になるということです。On that basis, her role is to support the emperor. Therefore, if a person who got birth to support the emperor on that basis try to leave the emperor family for pursuing her own personal happiness, then this kind of person with some background shows up. What kind of background? He is from the kind of family that has been eating off the insurance money from killing their family members by making it look like a suicide. This is the background of Keikomuro. His mother is quite notorious for her financial problems. Keikomuro himself, though he just passed the lawyer's exam finally, but according to some resources, he has been reported for background fraud, and if he passes the exam, the New York Supreme Court will launch a character investigation, and it has possibility he may be disqualified and dropped in this investigation. So, things are not looking favorable. After all, in Japan, the soul is Kanoto, so it is very important to be able to raise the ritual. It can prove that they have met certain standards. However, they are not yin and they are not yang. Their souls have not risen to the level of Kanoto, so they cannot even hold a wedding, including Nosaenogi, nuptial ceremony. They are not blessed by anyone. And the situation is totally the enemy for Japanese. So some Japanese, we don't know exactly who, but it looks some Japanese tipped him off that he was falsifying his background to New York Supreme Court. Is this someone close to him? It's totally impossible to do this kind of thing without knowledge. Besides, you can't claim that this is who he really is without knowing him, can you? So it's totally turning pale. Besides, until now, Mako-sama and the秋篠宮family and the government helped for their living and his death and his mother's death, everything regarding money. and he had received financial assistance a lot from his previous firm in Japan since he was in graduate school because he had assumed that he would contribute there if he passed the New York lawyer exam. However, since he would not contribute, so he would have to repay the money. So the amount was tens of millions of yen. He has been in a lot of debt. It seems that Mako-sama paid that money as well. It seems that the money to repay his mother's fiancé also came from Akinomiya's estate. Definitely, people abroad don't know anything about this background at all, and people overseas don't know why all Japanese hate them. Japanese people are all outraged because money spent by the imperial family comes from people's taxes from the first place. So what they are doing is completely out of the ordinary in bad meaning. But I am going to say it here because I know there is no other chance to say congratulations for them in the future. So congratulations, Mr. Komuro, on passing the law exam here. I really would like to ask you one pure question, Mr. Komuro. How can you defend people when people are so suspicious of you? Plus, you couldn't even defend yourself. So back to the plot. On top of that, living in a luxury apartment with a rent of 600,000 yen with no clear job so far, and those living costs is also via Mako-sama. So he's completely like princess and totally depending on them. So his comfortable life was assured by her. Reverse Cinderella story. It's so envy, right? No matter if he said he passed the lawyer exam finally, but actually, so what? His situation is totally like, you got a lot of help from people, so work so hard and pay them back. But we all know that he will not return the money, and definitely he would say like, 私の方としましては贈与と認識しております。バカにしてるよね。Some people say he has succeeded in turning the imperial family into an ATM. Yeah, this is very accurate expression. I don't know how it's reported abroad, but yeah, this is the actual station. However, for the souls who have struggled in climbing up to Kanoto, this prophecy or the Japanese gods can recognize the energy of Kanoto. Oh, Kanoto, Sazerashi was born right now. Here now, one Japanese season is born, one count, Then the station will be, find the yang that fits perfectly with this yin, find the yin that fits this yang perfectly, and move on. When? In October of the Japanese lunar calendar, the month of Kaminashi, all the gods of Japan gather in Izumo to hold the Enmusubi Taisai, kind of marriage ceremony, not only about the chemistry of marriage though. It includes all of chemistry, not only love matter, at Izumo Taisha Shrine in Shimane Prefecture. In case you're wondering, this year it is for a week starting on November 3rd, and all of the ritual ceremony is going to take place with these schedules. It is Japan, where God searches for yin or yang and brings it to you. Japan is a country where God comes between the yin and yang and brings them together. Therefore, the interpretation that Kimon and Ura-Kimon are evil directions is incorrect. As I said in the last video, the country has two completely different energies, yin and yang, which are attracted to each other. And these energies are separated between the ox and tiger, as this prophecy is showing. This country has an energy rift between the ox and tiger directions because they are made up of completely different energies attached to each other. The state of yin or the state of yang is a diamond that was created by really hard work and polishing. Only when it has reached the level of perfection can it fulfill its role as yin or yang. In other words, the strange objects that are neither yin nor yang, such as Keikomuro and Mako-sama, are attached to each other by the presence of evil energy in between. We can visualize and understand that this is where the demon Kimon, Ura-Kimon, come from. That's something this prophecy tried to say. Once again, the interpretation that the Kimon and Ura-Kimon are evil is wrong. Rather, they are incomplete yin and incomplete yang, and only then can evil energy enter between them. And that gulf is just between the ox and the tiger, as this verse is showing. You know what I mean? Maybe half of people can't understand what I said now. So, can I talk about Gakuto here for a minute as a good example? He is a popular singer in Japan, kind of entertainer. He got sick for a while and stopped appearing in the media. Actually, I had a kind of a pinprick before that happened. Why did he get so sick that he couldn't work? He had been going back and forth between the northwest and the southwest many times. In the year that for him was the northwest town Honmei Satsu and the southwest town Honmei Texas and Saiha. In case you are wondering, the Honmei Satsu is the direction that kills the physical body, and the Honmei Texas is the direction that kills the spirit, okay? When I learned about this situation, I knew without reading any gossip article like Shukan Bunshu that he was having an affair. Why is that? Why I could recognize like that? As I explained earlier, perfect yin and perfect yang are perfectly aligned. ピタッとくっついてんだよ。That if they are imperfect yin and imperfect yang, there's a gap between them. だから鬼門裏鬼門 show up ってことね。And what is the act of tearing them apart by going back and forth between the gap that has been created? This action itself is adultery, right? Do you notice that? Moreover, on top of that, the fact that he go back and forth between the Honmei Satsu and Honmei Texas on the Kimon Ura-Kimon shows that in the judgment of the universe, the definition of adultery is an act that harms one's body and spirit. The image of falling into the gulf between yin and yang in a completely different and lower dimension. And this is called Kimon Ura-Kimon. In other words, the unification charge got in the middle because a gulf was created between this yin and yang. A demon has taken up residence in between. There is a gulf between this energy flow, ox Kanoe, and that energy flow, tiger horse Hinoe, but only if they are completely yin and yang. If the energy of Japanese season is functioning as Kanoto, that is, if it is perfect yin and perfect yang, they are snugly attached. You know? その隙間に魔物が入る猶予はないはずなんですよ。However, if it is incomplete, the imperfection allows an evil spirit to enter between the two, and the demon ties the two together. That is why placing a sacred shrine or a temple at the Kimon or Ura-Kimon is the highest vibrational state, which can represent the perfect yin energy and perfect yang energy. Placing that highest vibrational state acts like tuning a piano. People can recognize which state is yin and which state is yang. If they are established with the energy of perfect yin and perfect yang, no demons can get in between them, between the tiger and the ox, right? In other words, the concept of Kimon Ura-Kimon is not of Chinese origin, but is derived from Japanese geographical factors and is a unique energy derived from a country that is formed by the combination of two opposing energies, which is proved by this prophecy. This prophecy proves that there is a gap between ox and tiger, and the gulf is the border between yin and yang energies. That gulf is closed when the yin and yang energies are perfect, but when they are imperfect, the gulf opens. The unification church has entered and nestled in the heart of Japan because the number of halfway yin Japanese seasons and halfway yang Japanese seasons, which cannot count as a sazareshi, which cannot count as one kanoto, increased, and the energy of Japan has become incomplete yin and incomplete yang, creating a gap between the two energies. So this prophecy, or the geographical structure of Japan, is saying, polish your soul properly and become kanoto. Polish yourself to become a perfect yin and perfect yang, otherwise demons will come out and take up residence between yin and yang and parasite in the ditch. So Japan's fundamental problem is not aging, rather it is the opposite, right? This prophecy which says that the Kanoe needs the Hinoe to grow up, which means that in order for the Kanoe to grow up, Hinoe, elders are necessary. Yusuke Narita, an associate professor at Yale University, says that Japan's problem is that the aging society has accelerated so much that the number of elderly people has increased. So the only solution is collective self-determination of the elderly. The only solution is collective suicide of the elderly. Some elderly people's heart might have stopped by the shock hearing this ridiculous theory. Do you see that what he is saying is exactly the opposite of this prophecy? Mr. Narita's idea is an ideology that will bring Japan to thinking. We are to utilize the elderly people who are the Hinoe for the development of the Kanoe. That is why Japan has longevity. That is why Japan is full of elderly people. They are not living long for nothing. From this prophecy, it is that purpose that allows us to live to an advanced age. And that purpose, it says, is to train and nurture the Kanoe, the next generation. The role of the elderly is written right here, isn't it? I mentioned Upper Hotel earlier, but Mr. Narita's idea is exactly the kind of idea of Red Planet Hotel type. So I think we should take advantage of the fact that there are many elderly people because I am an Upper Hotel type of thinker, where I'm not forcing you to. If you think he's right, and then you can commit seppuku when you turn 60, he's the one who insisting, so he will do. He does not try to make the reality live, but to destroy it, to bring it closer to his unrealistic ideal. This is separatism, because he tells us not to bring Hinoe closer to Kanoe and to eliminate Hinoe, because he does not have the wisdom to make use of Hinoe. So he proving by himself that his theory has not been elevated to the level of Kanoe, the level of sword. So that's why he feels Hinoe is an obstacle. As I mentioned earlier, those who are halfway influenced by American ideology and have not trained their souls in the Japanese climate don't have the concept of creating fire from wood, earth from fire, and metal from earth. They don't have the idea of turning the economy around by making the most of the situation in the first place. He proved. So killing the elderly will solve the problem because there are more elderly people, right? His crazy theory proving that his Kanoe, which means his mind, way of thinking, getting off because he didn't grow up in a strictly disciplined environment and with someone in a Hinoe position. And I guess it must be his father. Yeah, he proved to himself that he sees the world based on his childhood psychological state and that this gave rise to his distorted theories. People who have not become Kanoto, or it can also say that the Kanoe grew up without Hinoe, like him, fall into this kind of ideology, separatism. The problem is not that the number of elderly people is increasing, but that there are more halfway people who cannot become yin and more halfway people who cannot become yang like him. In other words, there is a gap in this prophecy. There is a lack of citizens with the wisdom to stick these two energies together. That's why we need people like the president of Upper Hotel. We need an old wise people who can teach Yusuke Narita about living economy. He proved by his own theory of division that he himself needs old people. It's really funny irony, right? He's proving to himself that he became crazy, his theory is completely off from the reality because he did not grow up being trained by Hinoe. That's why his theory is quite off from the reality of Japan, which is full of older people. Instead of taking reality as it is and thinking to use it, they destroy and twist it with unrealistic ideas of separatism. He proved by his collapse theory that he is broken because he didn't have Hinoe in his life. It's very pity. That's why his sword is not sharp enough. By the way, should the president of Upper Hotel really resign? I don't think so. Because from her, young people can learn a lot of useful economic lessons. Because she is kind of person who can do right choice in the critical situation like corona, and a lot of people was saved by her. As long as there are plenty of people with half-finished thoughts who have not yet become complete thoughts Kanoe, the role of the elderly will never disappear. In other words, as long as the cause of training and fostering Kanoe exists in Japan, the role of the elderly should be significant. This should be the reason for the longevity of the Japanese people. To deny that great cause will eventually lead to the downfall of one's own existence. I mentioned earlier that those who control the iron controls the nation, and that iron is right in the middle of the prophecy. The Kanoe-Tiger is the energy of a craftsman, the energy of a blacksmith. In other words, this Kanoe is energy that can be used only when we add human power on it. Kanoe can be used only when it is beaten and heated to the point of being painful. It is easy to understand if you think of the process of making a sword. A sword is made only when it is beaten and heated with all one's might, and only after passing through that process over and over again, it can become a sword. In other words, in that kind of environment, Kanoe, Japanese people, are very talented. If we assume that Kanoe as Japanese people and Hinoe as a society, the fact that Hinoe is located to the right of Kanoe means that Kanoe is dissolved by Hinoe and exists under such a relationship. In other words, an important decision can be derived from this. Japan is not a country where people pursue what they love and excel at it, but a country where people overcome their weakness and demonstrate their abilities. The country where one is recognized by the society only after overcoming one's weakness. つまり、好きなことを追求してそれを得意とする国、得意なことを勉強して才能を伸ばす国ではなくて、苦手を克服して能力を発揮する国ってことが言えるんですよ。In other words, the key to survival in Japanese society is not to say, I am good at this, I am good at that, I am capable of this, I am capable of that, I have this, I have that. But rather, I overcame something that I am not good at and became a full-fledged person in this way. It is the same in job hunting or anything else. Derived from this energy, Japan has no environment in place to nurture athletes, professionals, or artists. Like, oh, this kid is gifted, so this kid is going to be something great in the future, so let's train him in this field. You know? There is no momentum to develop them like this way because of this energy flow. Even tennis player Nishikori was able to develop his talent because he went to the United States. In Japan, there is no culture to train people to become masters at what they love to do from a young age. When it comes to athletes and other people who want to study something they love and master it, there is no other way but to go abroad and master it. In the end, the only way to achieve this is to go abroad and pursue it. People like Ichiro, Matsui, who have done only what they love and have mastered it, end up living abroad. On the other hand, if they come back to Japan, their lives will be dull and strange. For example, there is a Japanese who won a ballet competition, went to the US, and then to France. However, he came back to Japan after his failure. From there, he worked in a nursing home or at a supermarket. He has lost all his dimension. He should have stayed in the US instead of going to France. This is a important point. So he has mastered what he loves because he has extraordinary talent. And I know his talent is more than the people who work in Paris Opera Ballet in France. But there is no environment in Japan to make use of it. So there is not enough environment where he can continue to do what he loves. The most important point here is that it is not written here that the talent will grow if you spend your money and time immersed in the only one thing you are talented at. Rather, if you do, you lose your place to live. People who have done only what they love to do fall into a so-called unlucky situation. Those people are so hard to live in Japan. In other words, when we reincarnated as Japanese, we are expected to overcome our difficulties, pass through adversity, gain wisdom, refine our souls, and become truly Kanoto. That is the purpose of reincarnation in this country. So this is the basic premise. So I know it's quite difficult, but we need an environment that nurtures artists and athletes with this understanding. じゃないと人がそれだとね、人とされちゃうね。Yeah, so I can't give the same advice to both of them because they have completely different dimensions. Okay, in the former case, first of all, learn to work hard and polish your concentration ability. Yeah. First, try everything and train yourself by doing what you are not good at and find out what you are through the encounters you have during the process of turning a mere lump of iron into a sword. Because to become Kanoe, you need the help from Hinoe. That is why the phrase Ichigo-ichie exists in this country, a country where encounters with people are extremely important, a country that treasures each encounter with others. Everyone will be the teacher. That is how it can be interpreted from this part. Where I think it is especially important to meet someone who will be a strict teacher, otherwise an immature soul cannot be nurtured. In other words, this policy also describes something about how to train, raise, and nurture the immature and not so much experienced soul. There will be a lot of people with extremely juvenile ideologies. Yeah, this policy is for this kind of people. This policy can be said to be a group of people with souls in a stage where, except for very few skilled old souls, the souls reincarnated in Japan originally have some potential but have not yet been found so far. So please find it in this life. That is how it is said. However, it is said that unless you put yourself in a severe environment, you will not find it. So too many Japanese are wandering around in the dimension of mere personal pleasure without demonstrating their talents because there are not many people who dare to grow up in such an environment. Anyone who claims to have a theory of success without effort is already greatly deranged at the point. It means that they are living in a lower fire dimension because this clearly says that it is important to experience pain or you cannot become sword. It is like admitting to themselves that the person insists that kind of effortless easy theory because he or she failed to grow up in such an environment. On the other hand, those with old souls who watching my YouTube who are virtuous with experience, I feel awe because you don't need any advice from me. It would be quite ridiculous to get advice from me, but I have to do it as a formality, so I leave a message here. For advanced soul should cherish every encounter and aim for both the literary and the military arts. 文武両道. In addition, it's nice for you to polish up your main job by making use of various viewpoints to overcome your difficulties as an acquisition of diversity. Cherish encounters with people who discover your ability in your life because Kanoe-Tiger means you still have talent which you don't recognize. For example, you thought you had a talent for A and working for A, but someone C discovered your talent for B. And in the end, you become very successful by making B as your profession. This kind of development can be expected for you. Does not mean that you don't have the talent for A, so you give up and you decide to do B out of frustration and had no choice. No. Okay, not like that. So please don't misunderstand me. I happened to see this movie before. Lucky. Have you ever seen this movie? I strongly recommend this. This is a really nice, funny movie and have kind of important essence. The character A was a top-notch assassin. However, when he fell and hit his head in a public bath center and suffered amnesia, his locker key was replaced by character B. And the main character A then thought he was an unsuccessful actor, which character be doing, and devoted himself to acting, eventually becoming a great major actor. But along the way, he got his memory back. In other words, it's like iPS cell, which can differentiate into any organ. Yeah, you are iPS cell. You can be an actor, a screenwriter, and maybe even a voice actor, entrepreneur, or whatever. And it may be a 180-degree different world than you initially thought it would be. But that's okay, I think so. And lastly, it's better for you to work not to lower your dimension by refining your soul. This is important. 日本語でまとめると、経験値がある徳を積んだ古い魂を持つ者は一期一会を大切にして文武両道を目指しなさい。そして苦手の克服を多様性の獲得としてさまざまな視点を生かすことで本業に磨きをかけなさいと。その人生の中で自分の能力を見出してくれる人々との出会いを大切にしなさい。すると全く異なる分野で能力が開花する可能性がありますよと。また魂に磨きをかけて己の次元を下げないように努めなさい。ね。There is the energy of a guy, ox and horse, but also this side and that side are completely different in dimension, as explained in the previous videos. The proficient souls need to maintain their dignity so that they don't lose their dimensionality. 熟殺した魂は次元が下がらないように品位を保つ必要があるということですね。でないと低い日の次元に落ちちゃうんですよ。To do so, after all, one must train one's spirit by engaging in martial arts like this. Well, whatever it is, I won't force it. In my case, it was karate or classic ballet. Of course, I think people should devote themselves to what resonates with their souls. But there is a reason why I insist in this way, because Kanoto Ox needs to be refined so that it can survive as an independent entity. So not as a member of a team joined by an unspecified number of people. Because the Kanoto Ox gets lucky when it acts alone. So if you are subservient to someone else, your luck will go down. In other words, it means that Japan is a country that can ask other countries for help, but if it melts together and depend on each other to the extent that the shape of the base is unrecognizable, like water, it will turn in negative and break down. Therefore, it contains a lesson on how to live as a Japanese. If you strive to maintain your dignity alone, you will create your one and only sword. So if you are a skilled soul, you will experience every adversity as an acquisition of diversity, and you will be able to do things at an uncommonly high level. Yeah, so that's the reason I have not given up. There must be a few Japanese in this stratum. This prophecy means that there are Japanese souls of considerably high level who have accumulated a lot of virtues unmatched by any other race. These people will definitely watch this video someday, or even now watching, I don't know. That is why I worked so hard to make this video in time for Kamahakari 2022. When you reincarnated in Japan as a Japanese, then you are not meant to do what you like to do on your life. So each one of us needs to find the answer to what that means. I have no intention of forcing you to live a certain way. 日本に日本人として生まれたということは、つまり好きなことだけをやるために生まれたわけではないということを意味するんですよね。なぜなら好きなことだけやっていると人生がままならずにうまく回らなくなってしまう。ということは、あなたは何をするために生まれたのですか？ We have come a long way in Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, but if we live with what I have said here in mind, and if we carry on that way of life, it can say that we will see the light of day in the decade of the Kanoto Ox starting in 2073. Looking at the flow of this major destiny, the big flow for the decade beginning in 2073 is the Kanoto Ox, which is the same as the left side of this prophecy. This means that Japan is moving in this direction. So this means that Japan is heading toward a trend that will make us realize how important what I have said from Part 1 is. In other words, A great leap forward is achieved when the spirit is disciplined and functions independently without degrading its dignity, but the flow in which souls of lower dimensions are eliminated at the stage of advancing to this stream. Because Kanoto is made up of the souls of those who sacrificed and died for Japan, so there will be a trend that will highlight how we have lived by training and nurturing our spirit. So I see this stream as if this is telling us to create a new education system and a new national school and nurture the spirit and the soul of the Japanese people from scratch. Then the result will be achieved in the course of this 2073 decade. I believe that the Japanese should find something that one is passionate about for the benefit of others while overcoming one's weakness in the spirit of Bunbu Ryodo, and further hone one's abilities and the skills under the guidance of a mentor who can hone them. In the process of doing so, you will discover your unexpected abilities and talents, find your true self, and realize what you are and what your talents are. So this is the Japanese national character, and this is the kind of country we live in. Well, this may be an idealistic view, but I think that the proper national school should be established so that the students can find a job and be guided to the point where they can find a job. There is no other way but to completely rethink and rebuild the education system from the ground up. Of course, it's a small group because it is Kanoe-Tiger and Kanoto Ox. A group learning environment is not a learning environment for the Japanese. It just gives an environment that creates trouble. So the problem with students who cannot go to school in the first place is the environment of the group. It is not that they lack the ability to learn and become corrupt, but the environment of the group is harmful. That is why the amoeba management invented by Mr. Inamori works very well in the Japanese climate. In addition to studying Japanese, math, science, and social studies in small groups of less than 10 students, students need to be able to study soccer, baseball, or classical ballet or whatever at the school to become professionals and to make a living at these activities. However, it takes a great deal of wisdom to be able to make a substantial living doing so. So therefore, it is necessary to create an environment in which people can learn ordinary studies well so that they don't lose their life choices and fall away from life. In other words, it is necessary to create an educational environment that allows the individual to realize his or her aptitude to some extent by the age of 18. There are a lot of people who have graduated from college or university and have fallen into the dimension of fire without finding it. Even if a person is an inexperienced and immature soul, there is absolutely no such thing as being incapable of doing anything. This process says that when you reincarnated as a Japanese, you have something. It's just that many are at the stage of not finding it at the point of reincarnation. So the Japanese have to dig hard to find it. So this is telling Japanese to work hard, dig, and find it. Therefore, it is necessary to create an educational environment suited to the Japanese people from scratch. I believe that this will eventually solve all problems, including the employment of teachers, the aging society, the declining birth rate, productivity problems, and the natural disasters. Yeah, I think it will solve all of them. You think that's impossible? I don't think so. Look. What the hell is this? How did this happen? Education, right? The reversal is also true, Doesn't this suggest that if we give Japanese people a good education and lead them, they will be influenced by it and change their lives in a good way? And there is another interpretation. This is a prediction of the future for the Japanese who love the occult. As I have already explained, I am sure that you are well aware of the fact that Japan is a country that honors its victims. I believe that the fact that Japan is a country that worships its victims as gods will once again be visualized in some event, like the resurrection of Lord. For example, like a resurrection of Lord, like 平正門みたいなIt's kind of thing、平正門がどう復活するとかどうこうじゃなくてねI think it can be read as the resurrection of souls who died as victims of this strange energy in Japan. In case you're wondering, the three major grudge spirits of Japan are also the energy of this very prophecy. You're recognizing about it. Yeah, it's a quite long story, so I won't go into detail, but yeah, this as of 1966, they claims, hey, I'm here, don't forget. That's why this energy show up. Back on point, in a broader sense, reincarnation may be visualized and proven realistic due to the resurrection of souls who died as sacrifices. And since it is a guy of ox and horse, I feel that it will be an opportunity for the other dimensional world to be visualized and proven. But to make this a reality, we have to train our soul considerably to see anything, or it is possible that nothing will happen, or nothing can see. After all, at this point in time, most Japanese people are living in a heart of fire, and there are few Japanese who can push their souls and climb up to the Kanoto level. If things continue as they are, it won't be possible, but it will be up to us to make it happen.It all depends on how we live and how we convey the spirit of the Japanese people and the Japanese way of life. That's why I'm making this video with the recognition that what I'm doing now is extremely important. The year is 2073. おいら死んでるな。But I would like to see it, so I'll try my best to live longer.I'm the completely opposite of Mishima-san. I'm going to try my best to live a long life. Finally, I'd like to end by giving this series of theories a name. Because after all, without a name, it will fade away and disappear. A name can breathe life into the thing. Actually, I used to think my mother was somewhere else.Like, when I saw a lady outside, then wondering, is this my mother? Yeah, I know it's strange, but I had a psychological condition that made me search for mother. I call it みなしごハッチ syndrome. I had a long period of wandering around. One day, when I was a student, I went to see fortune teller.I went alone. First, I wrote down my name and the date of birth and showed it to her. Then the fortune teller asked me this question at the very beginning. Who gave you your name? And I replied, my mother. Is your mother a scholar of Chinese literature? What? No, she's an ordinary person. And she said,I thought she had consulted with a temple priest or some other expert to see if she could come up with a name for you. No, my mother said she studied and looked for the name from a book. Then the fortune teller said, your name is more wonderful than you know. So take good care of it. Yeah, since then, the feeling of sleepwalking outside to find my mother disappeared. I kind of felt like my soul was anchored to my body by my name. So I would like to end by giving a name to what I have discussed in this series of Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, namely the theory of thinking about Japan based on this prophecy. The name is 景気理論I took one letter from my name, which the fortune teller raved about, and one letter from Mishima-san's name. In part 1 video, I intentionally showed Mishima-san's movements in hours and minutes. That was intended to do this. As I have talked about before, this cannot be a small energy. It's a grand energy. Because it's Hankai.So I talked about this energy at the beginning of part 2 because I realized that he's using the energy of time with that intention. So I would like to end here with the hope that the keiki theory will take root and be recognized not only in Japanese society but also in the world. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.